I am Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. Nice. That was solid. Good job.
I'm a good howler.
Yeah, you're a good howler. That's why we got married. Oh, spoiler alert. Just spoiled it. Today on Lunacy, I'm interviewing my wife, the lovely, talented, and amazing Christine Erwin, about number 43,221 on my to-do list. Kidding. It's already done. Boom. Drop the mic.
Not really.
No, it's not really. It's not really. I haven't gotten that far. No. We're actually going to dive deep into one of my favorite topics today. We're going to talk about addiction. Now, you might be asking yourself, what on earth would this straight-laced, business-savvy, beautiful, intelligent lady at my side know about addiction? No way she's had issues. I hear you. But as is always the case, way more than meets the eye with this beauty. That's right. She's had her struggles, as have I. So today we're going to open up, be vulnerable, be honest, let it all hang out, challenge some norms, and wax philosophic on one of the biggest black holes around, good old addiction, and how to overcome it. Today on Lunacy. Welcome to the show, Mrs. Erwin.
Thank you.
So happy to have you on the program. It's when I say something, then after that you say something back.
I'm happy to be on.
Well, good. I'm glad.
It was a long commute.
You know, the booking was really challenging, I got to say. It took a long time to get you booked. And then, you know, the prep getting onto the actual show was pretty extensive.
I'm sorry. My assistant can be challenging.
She's a task master. And the eyelashes took a really long time. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Now you're going to have people look at my eyelashes.
People are looking at her out. But look how beautiful her eyelashes are. They are really incredible. There was one stray eyelash that was like causing havoc.
Okay.
And it's been taken care of, right, baby?
Yeah, it's been taken care of.
Oh, the things you put up with me, you know? You really signed up for...
That should be a podcast.
The
things I put up with you.
The next episode with Christine will be the things she puts up with me.
Yes.
Awesome. So great. So we've been talking about this for quite some time, and we've had a lot of discussion about it. And I know I have shared in the past my own struggles with addiction, particularly with nicotine, cigarettes, and alcohol, and some marijuana. But we're gonna dive a little deeper into that whole ball of wax to see what's underneath. And you yourself have also had some struggles with addiction, which I found rather just surprising when I first found out about them, which was when we were first dating about 5 years ago. You know, almost 5 years. It'd be 5 years on Valentine's Day, you guys. That's right. We're total dorks like that. I had an accidental date on Valentine's Day with my now wife.
And it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I was scheduling it. She was like, we were going to get together another night, and then we were talking on the phone. She was like, oh, I was like, well, how about Thursday? Thursday happened to be Valentine's Day. And then after I booked it, I looked at my calendar and I was like, oh my goodness, you dummy. What if it goes bad? But it didn't. It went great. So any case, early on in our relationship, you know, I did discover some addiction issues that you had that I didn't know about. And so let's just kind of dive in. Let's give us a little history of like your struggles with addiction.
Okay, so, gosh, this is a big topic and it's hard to know where to start. I do want to start with one thing because you mentioned a couple times like you were surprised that I had addictions and you joked about this straight-laced person. How could she have addictions? That's the first thing I wanted to mention. Like, addiction, for a lot of people, at least for me, was something really hard to admit for a long time. I think even more because people wouldn't expect it from me.
Yeah.
So I had like a lot of shame and I hid it from the world. Even now, very few people know about my addictions. You could say I was a highly functioning addict through my addictions. So it wasn't obvious to people at all. So it's just a big deal to even be talking about it.
Yeah. Well, just to start off, in all seriousness, I really want to acknowledge you for being willing to come on the program and fess up and talk about your own struggles. I think it's really going to make a difference for people, you know?
Yeah. And even now, you know, I have a corporate job, and, you know, there can be some concern about people hearing it, but I've realized almost everybody has some type of addiction, and some are just considered really acceptable, so it's not a big deal to have it, but it still has an impact on the people, and it's just part of life. You know, there's nothing to hide. So I think, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished through it. So I think it's time to talk about it and see if I can make a difference.
Cool. Yeah. That's great.
So my addictions go way back, and you know, just to name a few, and they can really vary in you know, how they play out. But I've had addictions to drugs, both recreational as well as prescription. But I've also had addiction to exercise and like regimented diet, which some people might be like, addiction to exercise, that's awesome. But it ends up running your life as well. So addictions can really, you know, there's a wide range of addictions you can have. Yeah. And I've had a wide range of them. So what I want to share is my experience. And I just want to be clear, like, my experience is one experience out of many experiences people can have, and they're all valid. So I'm not saying like how it played out for me and how I overcame it is the only way to do it. Yeah. However, if it resonates with somebody, then, you know, it's worth sharing. And I also want to say some things that I have to say about it can be triggering to people, because there's a lot of people that fundamentally don't agree with my view on it. Sure. So I just want to mention that, and that's fine.
Yeah. And I spoiler alert, know what you're going to talk about a little bit. And I want to say, second what you said, you know, everybody has their own way out of this black hole, and however that plays out for you, God bless you. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great. And if you're also somewhat in the throes of addiction, you know, it's great to look at all the different options. And so we're going to present a couple here that, you know, maybe you haven't explored or haven't thought about, or maybe you have. And so that should be good. And also, you know, it's just, you know, there's nothing, you know, you mentioned so much of the shame aspect of the addiction in the first place, and that's part of the trap for sure. You know, we, as, you know, people who have been addicted ourselves, like, we just really want to give you all the grace in the world to be exactly who you are, how you are, where you are right now in this moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, just to add a little bit more about the shame thing and what's accepted and not accepted, people can joke about, like, I'm just a workaholic. But they're not going to say, I'm just an alcoholic. Right. You know, but they're both addictions, and there's impacts. When people are workaholics, it can stress them, they can get disease, and it can impact their family. For sure. So it is a valid addiction. You know, or, yeah, whatever, even food addictions to a certain extent, unless they're like really obvious and big, are acceptable. You know, I've heard many times in meetings where people are like, oh, it's almost that time to have a beer. Now, I'm not saying the people that are saying it are addicted. I would guess that some of them probably do abuse it because it's very top of mind. But could you say, oh, I'm just going to, I don't know, smoke a joint? That's not my thing of choice, but that's just not as accepted, even though it's become legal and it's more accepted. So there's just like an unfair kind of value put to different types of addictions and stuff like that. So I just want to mention that as well. So I think I'm going to start in the middle and then go to the beginning and end. Okay. So just to like get right into like my view on it and the thing that I said might trigger people. A lot of people who have overcome their addiction will not ever do that thing they're addicted to. For example, they were an alcoholic. They'll continue to call themselves an alcoholic, and they'll never have a drink. Yeah. Again, nothing's wrong with that. You've been 20 years sober, 30 years sober, doing 12-step. I think that's fantastic. It worked for you. It saved your life. And if you're fulfilled in life, and you know, you also meet community and people, I think all of those things are wonderful.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So, and that's quite common with addictions, even with drugs. You know, they quit. They're not doing it once in a while. For me, that didn't work, and that wasn't what I wanted, because my point of view on it is it's two sides of the same coin. If I'm overindulging in something because I'm addicted to it, and then I can't do it at all because I have a fear of if I do it, I'm going to overindulge. To me, that's the same side of the coin, just like somebody that overeats and somebody that's anorexic. It's the same illness. So for me, being in that position where I can't do it and I'm still addicted to it in my brain, and that's why I can't do it and I have fear, wasn't enough freedom for what I wanted. And again, I'm not criticizing. There can be people that are like, I'm totally fine with that. And that's great. People I know and I love. Nothing's wrong with that. But for me, I wanted the ability to be able to do the thing if I wanted, which actually I don't with the things I quit, but I don't want it to be because I have a fear of it. Or I don't know, if I was accidentally given it, oh no, now it's all over. To me, the freedom is I'm not addicted anymore. I can have that substance and it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make me want to do it. So that's my view on it. I know a lot of people disagree and say, no, there's only, you have to abstain. But I'm living proof with more than one addiction that it is possible. And if that resonates with somebody, and like you said, if they're in the throes of it now, there may be an opportunity for them to look at that option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's also, by the way, worked for me as well. I mean, just pointing to a specific addiction, marijuana. You know, I was smoking every day for many years as a self-medicating thing, right? I really thought I needed it. There was a spiritual component to it for me because I do find that plant, that drug, that medicine, if you will, and I would, does really help to connect you to source. I mean, Rastafari, you know, but it can so easily be abused, and it does exacerbate some of the underlying problems that each of us face with, well, particularly in my case, right? It wasn't helping me to be more responsible. It would help me to be more creative for a limited time, but then, you know, I would get distracted by something else, and then I'm off doing that instead of like really ironing out and nailing down what it was that I was up to. And I stopped smoking. Well, I stopped smoking every day some time ago, like I don't know, several years ago. And I also recognized that I was using it in order to get high, and I was using it to escape. And I also recognized that there are other ways that I can escape. And I also recognized that there were a lot of feelings underneath there that I was really trying to avoid by smoking the pot. Okay. And that when I stopped smoking the pot, you know, I happened to be, it was really when we were in relationship. And there was space there to just really feel the feelings that I was having and just allow those feelings to come up and experience them and like cry and like grieve and really go back and revisit some of these childhood memories and traumas that I was having that really needed to be cleared, you know, that I was covering up with the pot. Okay. And so now that I feel like I've I'm not going to go as far as to say I've totally healed all traumas. That would be ridiculous. It seems they are never ending. But from, you know, I've healed enough of them to certainly to where I can function. And I've allowed myself the capacity to just feel the feelings no matter what those feelings are, particularly if they are quote unquote bad feelings, if they're sad feelings or mad feelings. I've allowed myself to do that. And so now, you know, occasionally I will smoke marijuana. Now I've transformed my relationship with that medicine, and I honor it and I thank it. And I set an intention before I smoke it every time. And I'm very aware of the effect on me and how it might affect me later. And I do use it to connect sometimes, not every day, just occasionally. And so that's one where I feel like, yeah, it's definitely possible to transform your relationship with, especially once you address the underlying issues that you're covering up with the addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you actually touched on so many things I want to comment on. One of them is, you know, when I said there's a freedom in that I'm not addicted to that thing anymore and I can do it. Marijuana is a perfect example. That wasn't one of my addictions, but there's an example of something that some people may say is medicinal. and it has some benefits. So if you weren't over the addiction and you were just abstaining and using tools to just, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to be strong, you wouldn't get the benefit of that medicine. And that's fine. You don't have to. There's other medicines, and some people may choose that way. But for you, you get to have that benefit because you can do it, and you don't have this addiction. You don't have this pull to it. So that's one thing I want to comment. That's a perfect example. Exercise is another example. If someone's addicted to exercise like I was, I can't be like, well, now I can't do exercise because if I do it. And by the way, it was like that for me. I used to go to the gym at 4 a.m, work out before work, go to work, on the way home from work, go back to the gym, work out more. Like, it was very normal for me to go twice a day. I was obsessed with it. And if I ever stopped for some reason, like I just burned out or I had an injury, then it was just like, no, like it was really all or nothing for me. And I was so regimented. I had like my schedule. So the all or nothing, if it was nothing, then I wouldn't be able to exercise. So it's just another example where there is a freedom in being able to do the thing. And certainly with food addiction, we have to eat.
Yeah.
So getting over the addiction, there are a lot of people that maybe get overeating under control, but it's a constant thing that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
What about the freedom to not have this constant thing you have to deal with? You literally just aren't addicted anymore.
Right.
So I want to go back to that one later. Like I said, there are a few things you touched on. The other thing I wanted to mention is, when is it called an addiction? I think only the person can decide for themselves. But your example of marijuana is a perfect example, because there are people that might smoke it every day that say they're not addicted. It's kind of like their nightcap or whatever at the end of the day. They're not doing it all day long. But one thing to look at is, what is the impact it's having? So now when you smoke it occasionally, the impact is it gets you into a creative mode. You benefit from the intention you put into it. But back when you were just doing it every day as an addiction, I saw how it sabotaged you.
Yeah.
You would have intentions that night, like, tonight I'm going to work on this with my business, I'm going to do all these things, and none of those things happened.
Because part of them would happen, but not get done.
It was certainly sabotaging.
Get sidelined. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would get sidelined a lot.
Yeah. So that's the thing I would just suggest people to look for themselves.
Yeah.
Is this sabotaging what really matters to me? Because there are things, people could have a drink every night and not be addicted, you could say, right? But what's the impact it's having?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was it that you were covering up with the exercise addiction? What was that about?
Yeah, so all my addictions, well, except for my current one, which we'll get to later, but all my addictions...
Me?
I think all my addictions were to not feel.
Okay.
And to have some sense of control. Like, it was a fake sense of control, but control, because I had a lot of regiment in the exercise.
I see.
But definitely to not feel, because it was just go, 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 go. And there is like a high from, a big part of my exercise, I would lift, but a big part was running. And, if for those people that run, the first mile is always horrible, but once you get past that, you do get into a zone. I remember times where I felt horrible. I'd be depressed because I suffered from that. And I would go on a 10-mile run and I felt on top of the world. So there was an addiction to that.
Yeah.
But I did want to touch on the food one, because that was the first one where I think I started on the path of learning on how to transform the thing so I wasn't addicted, but I could still have it. And so I had a food addiction, just where I was very regimented, and how many calories I can have and what I ate. And I wasn't overweight. I would say when that started, that time, I was very normal. If anything, I may have been a little thin. I was not overweight at all.
Okay. So your food addiction was more of like an anorexic type?
Not anorexic, no, because I didn't starve myself and get super skinny. It was just control of what I eat, and to not gain or lose, but just to be where I was at and control that.
Okay.
And it went with the exercise too.
Okay.
And I read a book, and I don't remember what it was called at the time. I read a book at the time, I don't remember now what it was called, about this woman related to food addiction and what she did to get over it. And the first thing she did, and I do want to step back for a second. when I would fall off and not follow my regimen, I would binge.
Okay.
So I did binge, yeah. Okay. So it was like, stick to this or just binge. I was also like a health fanatic at a very early age. So it was also related to not eating unhealthy foods. And then if I had that unhealthy thing, it was that, okay, I already had the cake, just eat as much junk as I can because tomorrow I'm going to start being strict again. So it was like that. So in this book, this woman said the first thing she did is gave herself no restrictions for several days. Just eat what you want. You're going to binge, but eventually you won't because you can only do it so much.
Yeah.
And I did that. I was just, and I didn't go crazy, but I was kind of like, no rules, nothing. I'm just going to eat and just eat what I want and let myself. And I noticed after that, like it just kind of stabilized because eventually it was just like, okay, I could only eat so much. I would get full. And I knew I'd have to eat in life.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't go through life never having a piece of cake.
Right.
So I had to be able to have one and not just go crazy.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of my journey of looking at how do I just become normal around food. So there's a lot more to it. That would be a whole nother podcast, but it's, that was the start of it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
And what was your kind of, so that one you feel like you conquered or you got through it by just basically allowing yourself to be who you are and eat how you eat and not be restrictive about it. What was the next addiction that really took hold of you?
Yeah. So one of the key things is, although I conquered that, I still hadn't looked at that point of what had me have the addiction.
Okay.
And like this was in my mid-20s, let's say. So I didn't look at that. So what happened is I just transferred it to something else.
Which was?
And my next addiction was cocaine.
Oh, wow. The Coke.
Yeah.
The nose candy.
Sounds so weird to say it now.
Yeah.
Seems like a lifetime ago. And by the way, I did a lot of transferring addictions, even so I was going back to one and back and forth, because at this stage I wasn't looking at what was underneath it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was cocaine, and eventually I got through that one.
And how addicted to cocaine were you? Were you like,
I was doing it every day.
Okay.
It wasn't like a long time thing. I think it was like about a year and a half.
Okay.
But every day. And, it was to the point like, they call it chasing the high. I wasn't smoking it, but it's still chasing a high with cocaine because it's like very short lived and then you come down and then you want more.
Sure.
And it wasn't just like on the weekends and the evenings. It was throughout the day because I needed it to get through the day.
Okay.
Because I was in that cycle of you just can't stop. When you quit it, you're, at least my experience, for like, the first 3 days I slept and then you're just tired because you just are catching up because you've just been on go speed. But
you've been taxing your reserves that whole time.
Yeah.
So now you finally let it go, and of course you got to catch up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it that had you liberate yourself from that one?
Yeah. So there was part of me that was always like disgusted with myself. I think that's kind of normal. People are secretly disgusted with themselves often. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but for me it was, so I just didn't want to be addicted to it. But again, I just kept transferring. So I wasn't transforming anything yet. At this point, it was just like, okay, I'm done with this. Let's move on to the next thing. Not consciously thinking that,
right?
But that was just the next thing. So now I'll go back to the beginning. What I wasn't addressing is why I was addicted. And clearly later it came out that I was avoiding feelings, mostly what we'd call bad feelings.
Right.
So sadness and anger. But the key thing there is I'm saying what we call bad feelings.
Yeah.
Because we have it in general that you're not supposed to feel those feelings. Something's wrong if you're angry. Something's wrong with you if you're sad. Those are bad feelings. And, I would say that, or I would assert that for most people, addictions are avoiding those feelings. I'm not saying for everybody, I'm not saying every addiction, but I think it's very common. People have depression, they don't want to feel it, they take something. Or they have a lot of anger, they don't want to feel it, they take something. And sometimes it backfires because it may relieve it, but then afterwards you feel worse.
Right.
But there is a temporary relief. Gosh, even with smoking, there's a temporary relief of, and I've had that addiction as well.
Yeah.
But it was realizing that those feelings aren't bad. They're part of the human experience. What are those feelings teaching me? If I'm avoiding them, I'm never going to get the lesson. So like I'm constantly trying not to feel those things. So cocaine had me feel great. There's a euphoria with it.
Sure. And confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And confidence. And I will say there was a point in all of this where I went to a doctor and got antidepressants to help with the depression.
Yeah.
The problem with that for me is, yes, it took away the sadness, but I didn't feel happy either. It was complete numbness. Whereas when I did cocaine, I felt great. I had fun. I could laugh. I felt good. So I got to have that experience of the positive side. You do get the negative side when you crash, but then you just do more. That's why you're chasing it all the time. That was something along the journey. Like I said, it's a journey. It's not just, it didn't happen overnight for me kind of unpacking why I had these addictions.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I was addicted to opioids, prescription drugs, where I really got why I was addicted. Even my past addictions, that's when I figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I'm avoiding feelings. I've suffered from depression. I don't like feeling angry. With opioids, you don't get the high like cocaine, but I will say, and it's not as numbing as antidepressants. So I could still cry and I could still feel happy, but it kind of like gave a narrower band. So my lows wouldn't be as low. And I was willing for my highs not to be quite as high, to not have my lows be quite as low. So that addiction was like really providing what I was looking for.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's so interesting about what you're saying is, societally at this point in time, we really have an addiction to happiness, globally, really. Maybe not everywhere, okay, but certainly here in the United States and in quote unquote Western culture, whatever that means, the dominant culture that we have does not want to cry, and it doesn't want to feel sad feelings, and it doesn't want to feel bad, and it doesn't want to explore its lack of confidence, and etc. It just wants to cover it up, pretend it's not there, and move on, move forward. There's no, even with things like with death and dying. I've talked a lot on this show about how important it is for me to grieve my father, and how important that is for me to feel love for him, because grieving really is love. And so much of what you're talking about, and the reason that I think we have such an addictive culture in general, is that we don't honor those quote unquote bad feelings, those negative feelings, when really, all of it's on a scale of polarity anyway. Your highest highs are only going to be equal to your lowest lows. And unless you allow yourself to fully experience those lowest lows and really go there and just accept, okay, I'm really going to feel crappy. I know for both of us on a personal level, this has been a really tough year, the last year. My dad died. You've had some health problems going on in your family that are very serious. We've dealt with some betrayal, which we're not going to get into here, but these kind of things that can really like take you down, where you really trusted somebody, you can't trust them anymore. You got to sit with that, where either you lost somebody or you almost lost somebody, and then you have to confront, oh my God, they're not going to be here forever, and that's so sad, and contend with that. We've both had work struggles and etc. Like, it's just been a tough year. And I think I don't personally find myself depressed overall, whereas in the past, maybe if these challenges had arisen, I would be. But I don't feel that way. Today I'm happy. I feel great that we're having this conversation, that we're doing this podcast. And that's very much about the fact that, that we have an agreement to allow ourselves to feel the lows, and that we honor those lows as giving us the grace to have the highs when we have the highs.
Right.
And so I really just want to honor that, and I want to honor that for everybody out there. I think what you're pointing to is it's not rocket science. It's real simple. that, one of the most important things is that we just deal with those quote unquote bad feelings that we have.
Yeah, that's the first thing I would say. We should stop calling them bad feelings.
Yeah.
They're just feelings. And they're
valid feelings.
yeah, valid feelings. And, I've heard it said, coming from a spiritual perspective, that one of the things we're here for as humans on this planet living this life is to feel all the feelings. There's gold in that.
Absolutely.
And by numbing, we're just missing the experience we're here for. So yeah, I have a completely different relationship to those feelings I was avoiding. I did suffer from depression since I was a teenager for over 25 years. And, when and that's a whole nother conversation but the interesting thing is it's almost like the addiction when I said I don't want to have fear of if I do that thing I was addicted to, like if I was to do cocaine right now, which I don't and I'm not into it, that I would then be addicted. It was the same with depression. I was so sad for so long. And even though I was going in and out of addictions, there were periods where I didn't have, where I was off the thing. The depression was still there in the background. But there would be a fear that if something really bad happened or something challenging happened and it got me really down, that I would go down that rabbit hole of depression. There was a time where that would happen.
Yeah.
Whereas in this past year, we've gone through, as you said, many things. Even our niece's husband died the same day as your dad. Young man. In the past, either I would take that substance that would numb me from it, or I would get depressed and then I'd be gone. I'd be in the pit of depression. Whereas now I can get really sad. I can have a very low day. You've seen that, but I'm not worried that I'm going to be stuck there. It's usually a day or two and I'm out of it.
Yeah.
And this may sound really weird, but I actually appreciate it. When I see why I was addicted to depression, I'm going to call it an addiction, I actually appreciate the thing I get on those days when I get to be really, really low. And what I mean by that is I get to curl up in bed and cry and just watch movies, and it's okay to do that. Or journal or whatever there is I need to do. Nothing's wrong with it. It's a feeling, and I get to nurture myself through that feeling. And I get to look at what's coming up for me. What am I afraid of? What's making me so sad? What can I learn from this? Versus being afraid of this feeling I'm having and thinking I'm going to have it forever.
Right. Yeah, that's really fascinating. The addiction to depression, because there is something that we get out of it. And I think it's okay if you want to try and talk a little bit about it, because I know some of your journey with that, and we've had a lot of discussions about it just personally about how that occurred, where you really got that you got to be, not be responsible for your life and really just tune out and turn off, versus really choosing to be, to be a vibrant, responsible, alive human.
Yeah, it's a really big conversation. I can touch on it, but I do think it requires a lot more than that because it's so complex. When I suffered from depression, there were times where somebody in my life might say to me, I can think of one person in particular that would say, just snap out of it. And I would get so mad. I'd be like, do you think if I could snap out of it, I would do that? Who wants to be depressed? I don't want to be depressed.
Yeah.
And it was really a matter of snapping out of it. But that doesn't mean it was simple.
Right.
It required a lot. I had to really get the payoff of being depressed. I even had to get that even though I said I didn't want to be depressed, and at some level I didn't, I really did. I was really committed to it because of those payoffs. So that could be very triggering because when I was depressed, if somebody said that, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? Nobody wants to be depressed. That's crazy. All I want is to not be depressed. This is a really deep layer to go under because it's at a subconscious level. And when you can unlock that piece of information for yourself, I am not joking. In one weekend, I got over it, and I've never suffered from depression since. And I get to have a day where I'm super low and cry. But the depression I had was, debilitating. I managed my job. That was an addiction at that point. My job helped me get through the depression, because at work I could just kind of turn it off, be responsible, get my job done, because I had to make money to survive. And, that was, gosh, these things are also intertwined. That was another thing that I learned at a young age. There's no time for those feelings of sadness and anger and things that aren't going to have you be productive, because you got to be strong, you got to produce, you got to be independent, you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So those strong suits I had of being very independent and productive and get a good job and take care of myself, actually those continued even when I went through addictions and depression. So that kind of helped with the depression. But I was super depressed, and it was debilitating. I often had thoughts of, I wish I had never been born, or I wish I could just die. Like, I didn't want to live.
Thanks for not paying attention to those.
Yeah. But it was really there for me. It was like, this is just too painful. Like, this life is just too painful. I don't want to live. Something kept me alive. And,
thank God.
Yeah. Lost my train of thought.
Yeah. Well, I would also want to point out that, the last conversation that we did have on this podcast was called Transforming Depression. And so we did dive deeper into your whole history with depression on that podcast. So if people want to listen to that, that'd be another good adjunct to this one right here. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
If you don't mind, we could jump back to the opioids, because I was present for that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was helpful in that process. Granted, you laid the groundwork. And so maybe you could just kind of take us through, we could both talk about that, actually.
Yeah, I'll walk through this, and it kind of is bringing everything together, because that weekend where I got over depression, this was in the midst of my opioid addiction. My opioid addiction was my longest one. It went on for 10 years. Again, highly functioning. Nobody around me knew.
Yeah.
My job went well. I was, life was normal, other than I was like, tethered to this bottle of pills and obsessed with it. So I got over the depression, and I knew I had gotten over it, and I was ready to feel. I was ready to feel the highs and lows that come with life.
Yeah.
And not narrow that band, as I said, opioids did. And so I no longer wanted to do these things. I was like, I don't want these pills. I don't want to be a slave to them, and I don't need them anymore. And however, with opioids, unlike my other addictions, the physical part of it is incredibly hard to deal with.
Yes.
Like cocaine, the physical part is a lot easier. You're tired for a few days and you're fine. It's nothing like opioids. I wanted to be off them, but I just didn't know how I could do it, because I would try and take less, but I just kept getting withdrawal, and I had to keep functioning in life.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had no job or anywhere I had to be. So it was super challenging. I didn't know the world of getting off drugs, because in terms of what was available out there. And I reached out to somebody. He said, well, you should go to a detox. So I went to a detox. This was before I met you. And I asked them before I went, I said, when I walk out of the door here, a week later, whatever it was, you're telling me I will not be addicted to this? And they said, absolutely, you won't be addicted to it. So I trusted. I went. They gave me methadone, saying that will wean you off it.
Right.
And I trusted. This is a detox. This is what they do.
Yeah.
And I did that. And so I was not taking the pills anymore, but I was taking the methadone. And I got home, and they even titrate that down. But they give you a dose the day that they let you go home. And I got home, and I started feeling physical withdrawal.
Yeah.
So it just didn't work.
Right.
And I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the space. I had to go to work the next day. I had to function. And it's, it's, as you know, seeing me go through it, functioning when you're going through the initial few weeks of withdrawal is just not
awful.
Awful.
For everyone involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I mean, let's call a spade here, because not all detox places are created equally. And so many of them are just profiteers. And they replace your addiction with another addiction, which in this case was methadone. And they don't really have any interest of actually getting you free of the drug. They really just have an interest in having you pay them more money to help you get off the drug that you're not going to get off of. And I'm not saying all of these places are like that. There are places that are legit and that do not replace your drugs with another drug. And those are the places, if you're looking to go into one of these joints, that you should go to.
Yeah.
But so many of them do that, and it's just fucking disgusting. Sorry, but it's fucking disgusting. And you know what? They can all go jump in a lake. All right? That's what I'm going to say that's nice about it. We could take all those, assholes. The assholes. What I mean to say is assholes. The assholes that are running these institutions that replace your addiction with another addiction, and just, have them go jump in a lake. All right? Very cold lake.
Yeah, and on that note, methadone's a perfect example. Again, I didn't know this whole world, but they're fine. They got you off the opioid, the Vicodin or Percocet or whatever the person is addicted to, and a lot of people in there were addicted to heroin, and there were various addictions in there.
Heroin
they have you on,
is opioids,
yes,
right?
Yeah, but like the actual form of heroin, and so. But it's okay to be addicted to methadone and just go to a methadone clinic. And because I met a lot of people there who had been through the system, and they told me, like, then when they're released, they just go and get their methadone dose every day. So I could have just gone every day and got methadone, but that doesn't help me. I'm still addicted to something.
Right. You're just a methadone head.
Yeah. So it was just, I just couldn't believe it. And it was very disappointing. And, I just went right back to using. And then, I can't remember now. Maybe it was like about a year later. I went to another detox, and
that was when we were first dating.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember.
Because
you called me and you were like, "Oh, I got some bad news," and I was like, "What's the bad news?" And you're like, "I'm in detox," and I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah, we had been on one date, and and then I called you to let you know, because
we'd been on a couple of dates, actually.
Okay, a couple. I really connected with you, and I just didn't want it to be a secret. Like,
sure.
Either you were going to be with me through this. I think you already knew enough of me to know, like, I'm a responsible person, and, I'm it's not like I had debt because of addiction. Like, I was, living a responsible life, and I had this problem, and you knew I was, I told you I'm committed to getting over it. And I took the risk of telling you, and I did. So this detox was definitely better than the other one. And I knew a little bit more at this point. So the nice thing about detox, and actually the first one didn't do this. The first one gave me methadone. This one, what they do is they do give you other things that are not addictive to help you, like just things to help you with your blood pressure, because that can go out of whack, or things that might just help you a little bit with the anxiety or some of the symptoms you may have, just to make it a little smoother for you. They do give you the option to take Suboxone, which is another prescription that helps with I've never taken it, but it helps you stay off the opioid, but then people are still addicted to that. And I said no. I opted not to do it because I'd been through the methadone thing, and I didn't want to do that. So I just went for it. It was challenging, but with the things they gave me, it helped. And like I said, this was very early on in our relationship, and this is also a complete another discussion. But I had made such drastic changes in my life, even around relationship, and I felt like when I started dating you, it was I'd pivoted from past relationships, and I was ready for a healthy relationship, and this was new territory for me.
Yay!
And so when I did leave this detox, although it wasn't as bad as the other one, there was still withdrawal. I guess what I learned in the end, the withdrawal from opiates is more than a week or two.
Yeah.
And we were so early on in our relationship, and I didn't want to be a mess. So I started taking pills again and didn't tell you. But then I did a couple months later. I didn't wait too long. And I did tell you because, again, I really didn't want to. But I knew I needed your support to do this because I was going to go through some stuff that doesn't look pretty, and you were going to be there. And so you just needed to be involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember you told me about it, and I was like, wow, I thought we talked about this. And I had said, if you're going to keep doing that, I'm out. But by this time I was much more invested in you and who you are, and, what we could create together. And also, I wasn't exactly free from addiction myself. I was smoking cigarettes. I was, smoking marijuana. I was drinking, not like, I don't want to paint a picture like I was leaving Las Vegas over here, but like, daily basis, I was doing something, and I was definitely smoking.
Yeah.
And so when you told me about it, I was shocked, but then I was like, okay, I could tell that you were committed. And then you asked me to be your pharmacist. You asked me to help you wean off of the pills over, like, I feel like it was like a 4-week process or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how long. The idea is wean me down and then I'd go quit. And you cannot wean down and then suddenly now it's easy.
Right.
It just helped to get to wean down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I gave you my pills and I told you how often to give them to me. And you remember, I'd be like, I need my pills.
Right.
Like it was intense. But then I'll never forget the day because we went out with some friends to see a play. That was the last day I took a pill. And then the journey began.
Yeah.
And we were at my house. And the really great thing about it is I was able to tell my boss, the owner of the company, because I was at a small company, the truth, and he was supportive, which made it so much easier because then there wasn't this expectation that I had to be a high performer on Monday morning in my job. I was able to work, but I worked from home, and I was able to kind of do it when I could and when I couldn't as I went through the worst of it. So that made a big difference, having the support around me.
So I think, in line with our theme here on overcoming addiction, this is step number 1, right? Tell the truth. Be honest.
Yeah.
Get the support that you need. If you're going to tell people they're going to throw you out or whatever, well, maybe you shouldn't be hanging out with them in the first place. But in your case, for sure, I mean, you told me, obviously, I was supportive because I love you. And you told your boss. And I remember distinctly that I was like, wow, I was very moved by how supportive he was of you going through this process. There was no, wait, what? It was all just like, whatever you need, I'm here for you. I really support you. Obviously you are a vitally essential employee and you're really good at your job. And so you're critically important, but it was beneath that. It was like, really, like, he just cares. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
And so that's really amazing. But so anyway, step 1, tell the truth about what the addiction, about the fact that you are addicted, to people who can support you and help you.
Yeah.
And to people who will not ignore the fact that you told them and pretend like that didn't exist or you didn't say that, right? Like for in the case of me, I mean, we're married now. Now we weren't getting married at that point, but we were in a committed relationship. We were committed to seeing how it was gonna pan out. We were both, I think, looking forward to this kind of a relationship that we have now. And so I was also very committed and on your side. And I knew how valuable a member of society you are and how much you could offer people just through your presence and also through the story of telling this saga, that this is what happened, that this is the crucible that you had to go through to get to the point to be who you are. And it's a trap that so many of us fall into. and that it's still a a global epidemic. It's not getting any better, this opioid addiction and fentanyl and etc. So so anyway, I like all of that to say that, like, even though I was supportive, go me and go your boss, like, you went through the hell of it, and I watched you go through the hell of it, and you were courageous as can be. I mean, I remember seeing you. We were in a hotel in Santa Barbara, I think, and you were just like sweating and like couldn't sleep, and your legs were shaking, and you were just like really, really going through it. And it was hard to witness, hard to watch, but also like you were the one going through it. And I also am aware of how long it took. I mean, it was a couple years. It made probably more, all told, with all the different symptoms and everything that you had to go through to get to the point where, you're quote unquote normal again, right?
Yeah. So you said first step is tell the truth. And, I think you said it, but also, like, you don't need to tell people that have nothing to do with it. You don't need
That's right.
non-supportive people.
I did not say that.
So, yeah. So, tell the people. So I told you, I told my boss. I had to tell my boss because step 2 is set up an environment that you're going to succeed in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to succeed if I was expected to operate and perform at the level I did in my job every day.
Yeah.
So if I was to have to go to work on Monday virtually, but still I was working like all day long, lots of Teams meetings. If I was to expected to do that starting Monday and then throughout the week and be available all the time, I would have failed.
Right.
So 2, set up the environment. Now, some people might say they're not at a job that they can do that. Well, then take vacation, figure it out. But this is more important, even if I was going to lose my job.
Yeah.
This was more important. And I even took a risk with you, but I something told me that you'd stand by me. I don't know.
I'm loyal to the core.
I just really felt that it, anyway, I had to do it. Either way, you were going to know because I just couldn't go through it and hide it.
Yeah.
Unless I said, oh, it's been fun having a few dates. Can we take a 2-month break? And then, but going to the time thing, I remember I just did so much research online, saying the fastest way to get over opioids, the easiest way to, like, I tried everything to find, like, how can I do this so it'd be easy and fast? And always it would say it takes 2 years.
Wow.
Always. And I just was like, 2 years?
That's cool that at least there was honesty on the internet.
And I mean, people went through their experience. Now, it doesn't mean 2 years of how it was the first day and the second day and third day. It changes. It does get easier.
Yeah.
But 2 years where it's not like there's one day you still feel withdrawal and the next day you're like, now I'm gone. But at 2 years, you're like sitting there thinking, or I was sitting there like, I feel totally normal. Mm-hmm. The first couple of weeks, it's the horrible, like, jitters inside, restless legs, sweating, just this, like, agitation. It's like, I think people will say, like, it feels like your skin is crawling. It does feel like that. It feels like underneath your skin, there's, like, all this agitation. And the only thing that relieved it, for me at least, is being in water. So I don't know if you remember, but I used to, like, run a bath at 1 a.m, take a bath. I do. Run a bath at 2 a.m, run a bath, like, several baths throughout the night. I was like, I wish I could just sleep in the bath, but I guess I thought that was risky because you could slip in. And
there was a while where I thought maybe I was stuck in the movie Splash with Tom Hanks.
But it felt...
Which, if you haven't seen it, great film, all right? Mermaids. You know what I mean?
It'd be good if Detoxes had a tank that they could have you in safely, but literally your body feels nice in water.
Well, and honestly, in all honesty, that's a very good tip for people who are working on getting over an opioid addiction. Go baths.
Yeah. Yeah. Your body in water, not having the weight of it, just
something takes it away.
It just really felt normal. I would get out of the bath, get in bed, and 5 minutes later, less than 5 minutes, get in bed and feeling it again.
Itching.
It was
again.
horrible.
Yeah.
It took, so that, I don't know, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, that's bad. Then it starts to reduce. I would say it was every day, and then it was just like every once in a while. So it wouldn't be like I felt like restless legs or the jitters or crawling skin every day, but it would come back every once in a while. It's like where I felt it like for a few hours, and then it would go away. So until eventually it went away completely. The thing that took the longest is being able to have a normal night's sleep. And I used to like often like go to the couch and sleep because I didn't want to keep you up, but I'd like be lying on the couch, or I'd just have to move locations. But I mean, there were months where I barely slept. Which is one of the reasons it makes it hard to work.
Yeah.
And, you know, gradually I could just sleep more and more and more. But I would say at 2 years, or roughly at 2 years, was the point where I slept normal and I never got those feelings anymore in my body. And I was completely free from it.
Amazing. Yeah. And so, so going back to, so obviously step one, be honest, get the support that you need, tell the people that matter, don't tell the people that don't matter. That are going to use it against you or whatever. And
you don't need them for the process.
Right, exactly. They don't need to know.
Yeah.
Number two, create an environment where you're going to succeed, where you have the opportunity to succeed with the help of those people who support you. I would say number three, like there's a huge acceptance factor, right? Where you're just really accepting all of the repercussions of being addicted and all of the feelings that are going to come along with it, knowing that those are going to be uncomfortable feelings, but still being willing to go through those so that you can get to a point of normalcy or a point of homeostasis.
Yeah. Yes, acceptance and just faith.
Faith. That would be number 4, maybe.
Yeah,
let's go
faith
with number 4.
Faith that this too shall pass. And it's almost like all those feelings that I was avoiding all those years, I remember having this thought, are all coming out in this physical reaction that I'm having now. All those trapped feelings that I was avoiding by doing drugs. It's like, okay, I'm feeling them all at once here.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And gosh, a lot of people go through it and relapse. I could never imagine allowing myself to be addicted to opioids again, because I never want to go through that again.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the worst.
Yeah.
There's another step. Now, this step I did years before getting over the addiction, or at least a few years before. But for somebody that hasn't, this is the key to like my philosophy on truly getting over the addiction, such that I can do the thing without the fear that I'm addicted, because I'm not addicted anymore.
Yeah.
And that was transforming what there was to transform under the addiction. So that happened to happen for me. And then I realized I don't need to be addicted anymore. I don't need this thing anymore, because I've transformed what had me have these addictions. But if somebody hasn't done that, I would recommend, if somebody's like, I've had enough of being an addict. I'm committed to getting over this. Do that transformational work, because I'm one of those people that I can do any of the things I was addicted to. After I quit cocaine years later, I was in a situation where it was there and I did it. And honestly, I have zero interest in it.
Yeah, gross.
Yeah, I don't like it anymore. But the thing is I was not afraid to do it. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this and be addicted. I knew, it's just like a knowing, like the addiction's gone. I don't have a need to escape feelings. It was more just at a party, have fun. And I did it. I was kind of like, I don't even really like it anymore. But the reality is I'm not doing it now because I have a fear or because I'm an addict. I'm not doing it because I just choose not to do it because I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a completely different feeling, and it's a freedom.
Yeah. The same thing with the opioids.
Yeah. So I was going to get to that. So the opioids, same thing. I remember it was still within the first 2 years. I went to have a laser treatment that they give you, usually like an anti-anxiety and a painkiller because it's painful. And I remember saying to you, it may have been after the 2 years, but I remember saying to you, I told you, I said, Jeff, I'm going to take a Percocet. I'm not addicted anymore. I have no interest in being addicted, and I don't need it because I'm good. And I'm going to take it because I don't want to feel pain during this procedure. Yeah. And I did it, and it was fine. And I wasn't like wanting pills again. And
by the way, I flipped out when you first mentioned it. I was like, you're not going to take a Percocet. You're going to take a Percocet. Yeah, I'm taking Percocet. I'm taking Percocet. Yeah, I'm taking Percocet. Like that. I was blubbering, and all I could say was Percocet over again. But no, I really did. I flipped out. I was like, I'm not, that sounds like a terrible idea. I can't believe you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And you were insistent, and I was like, okay, fine. But, we'll see what happens here, Missy. And then you were fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
And it was not a big deal. But also you were taking it in a very like specific thing to avoid actual pain from lasers.
Right.
And then, also they didn't give you a supply, etc. So it wasn't like,
yeah. But there's a lot of people that have overcome their addiction. And I'm saying it like that because in my opinion, when you're not addicted, you can have the thing.
Right.
You'll notice a lot of people who have been sober for 20 years, they still call themselves an addict.
For sure.
Because they're just not doing it. So, if you've actually overcome the addiction, then you can do it. So that's what I did. And I remember when we first met, because I was smoking at that time and I hadn't smoked for I smoked a bit in high school, quit for many, many years. One other time I did for a bit, quit. And then I was when we met. And I remember telling you, when I quit smoking, I can have a cigarette once in a while. And you just did not like hearing that.
No.
You were like, no, you can't. Because that had been your experience for you.
For sure.
And by the way, it's a very common understanding of addiction.
Yes.
It's the more mainstream normal thing. You can't do it because you're an addict.
Yeah.
And
you're going to go right back to doing it again all the time. You're going to throw away all that time that you spent. Yeah. And you're just going to become the addict that you were before.
Yeah. And I knew because of my experience with my addictions. And we fought about it. And in fact, we have a common friend who has an addiction to hape, which is a nicotine in a medicinal form. And I remember early on me saying to him, because it is a beautiful medicine.
Yeah.
And I know he loves the medicinal aspect of it. And then he can't control it. And I said to him, I wish for you one day that you're over the addiction so you can do it medicinally. And you were like, don't say that. He's got to quit. Because you had this experience of no. And I think, I don't know, I'm speaking for you, but I think it may have been interesting for you to see like, oh, wow, she had this severe addiction to opioids. She took that pill and she's not like asking for more pills or wanting to do it.
Yeah, it did sort of break the mold for that. For me, witnessing that with you, and the cigarettes, because you were also smoking and you were like, I don't care, I'm gonna have one. And I was like, you can't do that, forget it. And then since then, I've also done hape from time to time, and I haven't started smoking again. I've also done I did a sweat lodge ceremony with some brothers, and afterwards we smoked the pipe, and it's a tobacco pipe. And I smoked the pipe, and I'm fine. I don't want to go smoking cigarettes again. Sometimes after that kind of an experience, I'll feel the urge of the nicotine, like, oh, why do I feel like I want a cigarette right now? And then I'll be like, oh, because you did the thing, and now you feel like you want one. But then I'm always like, but I have no desire to go back to being a smoker. It's such a disgusting. I mean, look, everybody who's a smoker knows how gross it is and how expensive it is and what a pain in the ass of a habit it is and how it's just like everywhere. And then you smell terrible and everyone can smell you, and you have to go out during meals. It's like such a pain in the ass. Like, I'm so grateful to be free of that experience that I will not allow myself to go back to being a smoker. However, every several months, if somebody offers me a sacred pipe, I'll do it. You know what I mean? And
you've even had a cigarette.
I've even had a cigarette. Yeah. Not often, but like I've had one or two, and it didn't cause me. And I knew it wouldn't cause me to want to be a smoker again. Yeah. And I was also smoking it in a ceremonial fashion when I was doing that as well, which I think transforms the whole experience. Also. Yeah,
you and I are very intentional if we ever do something like that. And but I'm happy for you because you don't have this fear now. And by the way, having it and then saying, I kind of have the urge to have one, that's normal, because if you do something and it feels good, like when I have had that, like when I did take that Percocet, it felt good, but I don't have an addiction because I just don't have that. Like, I don't want to be in that state all the time, even though it feels good when I did it. And, I've been going through tattoo removal process, which is the most painful thing I've ever experienced. It feels like a razor blade being used on my back. And, you know, you had some opioids from surgery, and I've said to you, can you give me one when I go to do it?
Yes.
So I've had it, like, there's been a few times I've had them. In fact, when I do, sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I was addicted, because I would not want to be like that all the time, but I'm fine when I do it. So
yeah, I feel very fortunate also personally that I just hate that drug.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like the way that it feels. I don't like cocaine either.
Well, everybody has a different,
everybody has their own thing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, so, you know, I'd like to kind of to wrap it up, because I feel like we're in a good place. One of the things that I want to talk about is, you know, you're a coach, among other things, and you're open to coaching people, not only about their own depression, but also about, you know, their career path and what they're doing with their career, and also if they've got some addiction issues. You know, that's something that you can also that you can help people with.
Yeah. So the reason I am not addicted to cocaine, and I'm not addicted to opiates, and not addicted to exercise, versus just controlling it or abstaining from it, is because I did certain transformational work, as I mentioned earlier, that got to the root of it in a very powerful way. And in my coaching, I can help people get through that, because it's not a 5-minute description. It's a process to go through.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one more time, I am totally supportive of people that want to go let's say the 12-step way, or some equivalent of it, where they're just like, I'll still work on what's underneath, but I'm just like going to do that. I just want to say, consider that there's an additional level of freedom in that you get to, if you're interested, that you get to choose not to do that thing.
Yeah.
Not you can't do it.
Mm-hmm. For
so
sure.
That's all I'd say. But so in my coaching, I can lead people through the process of looking at that, so they truly have freedom from those addictions. And then depression. I was just listening to a friend of ours talk about how he got over depression after 25 years because of doing ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got over depression through transformational work. I haven't met a lot of people that say they got over depression. Mm-hmm. I've met a lot of people that have it under control, manage it with meds. Right. Again, whatever path you want. But I love to be able to share with people how I got over it, to see if there's something for them there so they can actually be free from it. Mm-hmm. Because I honestly thought there'd never be a day where I'm free from depression, that I just have to live with it and learn how to live with it.
Yeah, that's
so
beautiful.
That's what I
great.
coach on.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things I would say is like, you know, alcohol is just a real sucker. And so like the AA thing and doing that whole path, like really, I'm so supportive. Mm-hmm. I have one of my best friends in the whole world, declared himself an alcoholic and is going through the 12-step program, and he's, I don't know how many days sober now, but I'm so proud of him. And I, you know, had witnessed and been part of that whole disease, I guess, with him for many years, until I also, you know, freed myself from doing that every day. I'm not really interested in it anymore. Very rarely do I drink, because I see what a calamity it caused in my own life. And I also witnessed the history of like problems that it's caused in my lineage with my father, you know, before me, and probably helped to end the marriage of my parents, and for my grandfather, and how the horrors that caused with him being violent with my grandmother and other people.
Yeah.
So alcohol is something like, I totally get it. I also, I mean, I would say I technically was an alcoholic. If you want to go by whatever the rules are, do you drink every day? Do you have 2 or 3 drinks every day?
Does it have a negative impact on you?
Yes. All of those were yeses, even though I'd never admit that. Those were all true. And I don't do AA. I have done a lot of ayahuasca, not like every day, you know what I mean? All right. 2 days.
It's part of your practice.
It's part of my practice. I do a 2-day ceremony like every other month. And certainly that's what I was doing at the beginning, and I wasn't even expecting to not drink, but I just started to see how it was affecting me. And that's another thing where it's like, well, that kind of work, that kind of transformational work also is very helpful at getting me to explore my own feelings and allow myself to experience the sadness that I'm feeling and really explore the traumas of childhood, etc., that I've got going on, and just allow those things to happen. So I say all of that to honor you and whatever your path is, and also invite you to consider, that this is something that you can get over this addiction, as you're pointing to, by dealing with the underlying, problems of really not wanting to experience the feelings that are not great feelings, that are sad feelings, that are not fun to experience, but you are going to experience them no matter what. If you actively engage them from a place of acceptance, it's a much more healthy way to be. And then you're allowing yourself to feel them.
Yeah. And the other thing is there's a level of authenticity and honesty with yourself that it requires to really unlock that door of healing from it. And I wanted to also add, you don't have to drink in life, right? Like, you can go the rest of your life without drinking or smoking. But a perfect example, like I mentioned before, is eating. You have to eat. You can't go through life without eating. So that may be one where it's worth, looking at ways to truly overcome it versus manage it and have to constantly use willpower.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one other thing, when we talk about like avoiding feelings and addictions mostly being related to that, and it being hard to like admit to people when you have addictions and shame associated with it. Also beware of where in society there's things we do that actually contribute to the addiction. So what I mean, for example, is when somebody experiences a death, it's very common for a doctor to prescribe an anti-anxiety to that person. Yeah. Rather than, we both went through loss. You went through the loss of your dad. You cried. You felt it.
I'm still crying.
Yeah. You didn't take an anti-anxiety.
No.
People have to realize you're going to survive the pain.
Yeah.
But experience it. There's a beauty in it. Because like you said, that pain is totally related to your love. So I'm sure a lot came up for you around that pain, like a lot of beautiful things, and even more connection to your dad without him even being here. Yeah. So watch for where that happens in society, where it's acceptable. Like, here's an anti-anxiety because you're suffering. And then the thought is, well, the doctor's giving it to me. This is normal. I'm going through something. And then how quickly people can become addicted. Because when I got addicted to opiates, originally it was given to me for an injury.
Yeah, that's great.
So just, that's something to be aware of. And the other thing that was really important for me to mention, I was saying how addictions are, as far as I can tell, about avoiding feelings. And I've gone through many, and I mentioned my current addiction is not about avoiding feelings. My current addiction that I'm working on, that I think is part of the human condition, is the addiction to beating myself up. Negative talk, judging myself. Yeah,
that's great. I don't ever do that. Just kidding.
So that's a whole other. That's another path.
Yeah, that's another path.
What is underlying that? It's not about avoiding a feeling. It's something else, and that's the one I'm currently really inquiring about.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm glad you brought that up. I I'm in a profession where I have to. I force myself into a position where I have to analyze myself, the way that I speak and behave. This podcast, I have to edit this when we're done. So I'm going to watch myself and listen to myself talking for the whole episode. And while that sounds terrifying to many of you, it certainly was terrifying for me. It took me so long to get to a place where I was like, okay, no, this is what you do, man. This is who you are, and this is how you are, and I accept you even though you're not perfect. And also, I know I find, like, I just finished editing the video for my next song, Blame, which is like, I'm so excited about it, right? It's great, right? My wife here was helped me on set and did the makeup for the video, but it was really challenging for me to go in and edit that and look at myself, my acting and whatnot, because there's a story that's told in this video. On that note, I know I also suffer from that addiction, beating myself up. And I mean, it's one of the reasons that I do what I do, because I put myself in a situation where I'm forcing myself to back myself up. Like, I have to back myself up, and I have you to back me up too. Yeah.
But it's a whole other inquiry. So I call it an addiction because at some point every day I judge myself harshly, and it has a negative impact on my life.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't make me feel better. Why is that the addiction versus supporting myself, having compassion for myself, loving myself?
Yeah.
That's my current inquiry.
That's great. That's beautiful. Well, I'm here to help, and I love you, and I'm super happy with you. And you can tell, next time you're judging yourself, you just come over and tell me about it, and I'll tell your judgment to just go jump in the lake.
Okay.
That's what I'll do.
I'll do that.
Yeah, and the just on the, you mentioned the anxiety thing. People prescribe anti-anxieties when there's a death in the family, etc. Yeah, I mean, don't take those pills. That's just profiteers. They're just making money. The pills are making money on you. And also embrace the pain. Yeah. I think that's kind of one of the hallmarks of this whole episode, is like, really embrace the pain. Pain's not going to go away. You can't avoid it. You can take as many pills as you want, but it's going to come back even stronger. And then you're going to have to deal with it no matter what. So just embrace it when it's there. Allow it to be. Allow yourself to experience it. Go somewhere quiet, private, or go somewhere with someone else you can cry on their shoulder that wants to experience it with you, and really allow yourself to do that. So healing, so important. So the steps that we outlined for overcoming addiction are: number 1, be honest, tell the truth. Number 2, get the support that you need from people. Create an environment in which you can win. Number 3, acceptance. Really accept yourself and the feelings that you're going to go through. And number 4, faith. Really have faith in your ability to get through this.
And number 5, which could happen at the end, the beginning, or in the middle of all of this, for me it happened before number 1, is get to the underlying root cause of what's really going on there. It may not be as obvious as one might think, so that you can truly overcome the addiction.
Yeah,
so
number 5 is transformation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. And if you want to get in touch with Christine, how can they reach you?
Well, my Instagram is I am Christine Erwin.
Okay, beautiful.
And I have a website, but it's under construction.
Okay, great. So I am Christine Erwin on Instagram. Thank you so much for being my guest. I love you so much.
I love you too.
You're my favorite. I want to acknowledge you for overcoming all of these addictions and being a powerful warrior woman. And I really feel that way. I mean, it sounds funny to say it like that, but in our society, you are a warrior woman. You really are, professionally and in life and in my life. And I really appreciate you and all you bring, all the support and love that you give me. And I'm super proud to call you my wife and be your husband. Thank you. I love you. All right. All right, everybody, if you want to support this show, please go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast. If you want to get more involved, go to lunacycommunity.com, sign up, create a profile there. Until then, we'll see you next week. Much love.